Nation. Thank you everybody for joining us. Today we have a special guest from Edelbrock and Comp Cams, Mr. Mark Donnelly. He is a expert in a lot of these things. And he came down to help me out, get a new cam installed and some other goodies that we're going to talk about. Yeah, it's going to be a good show. You can see we're in the middle. I think they can see that we're in the middle of everything right now.
We got a mess.
We do. As always, you guys can ask questions by typing in a comment. We're coming to you live on both Facebook and YouTube, so thanks for joining us on one of those. Just type your comments in and Jennings can read those over to us. Hopefully everybody can hear us good enough today. I want to thank everybody for joining us again. This is going to be very informative on how to change a cam, why we changed the cam. We did some other things as well while we're in here. And this is specifically right now on an LS3, but it kind of applies to, you know, other engines too.
Yep.
So Comp Cams, of course, makes a wide variety of products in Edelbrock. So let's see. I'm gonna start explaining why we're doing this. So TERREMOTO, as everybody knows, has had a big built engine in it for a long time. I pulled the engine out to get it refreshed, and because I can't afford to not have a Jeep, I put a GM crate motor in there. It's the GM LS3 performance motor is 430 horsepower. It's a fine engine. Most people would be totally stoked to have 430 horse. And honestly, you know, I've had it in for 6 months, a year already, and it runs just fine. So what I don't have is that little bit extra that I'm always looking for. So I got a hold of Mark. Mark's like, oh yeah, I got some ideas. We've got some perfect parts that are made for this. Of course, in my big engine, I run all your stuff in the big engine, so no surprise there. So now what we're doing is we're just adding a few things to this one to give it that little bit of extra boost. So why don't I, unless we have some questions or you want to mention who's watching right now?
Yeah, Shane's watching.
Nice.
Nick Repanich. Tom Nagley says hi, everyone. Patrick Chamberlain, hi from Montreal, Quebec. Aaron Howard, hello from Colorado. Rick Harrington, TERREMOTO, getting some extra ponies.
Yeah.
VB Tom, hello, GenRight Nation. Steve Bird, let's get T-Moto even faster. Mike Stewart, hey everybody, Arkansas here. Byron Roberts, hello from Kentucky. Peter Doolin, hey there from New York City. Kelly Sims is watching. Stephen Warsh is watching. Nice. Terry Runyon says that's not TERREMOTO, it's yellow.
Don't even get my mom started on that.
Anthony Paquette said hello, GenRight family. Are you keeping it throttle body?
We are. Yeah. We'll go through all that stuff for sure in just a second.
Heaven Guard said, hey Tony, it finally happened. Dropped the Jeep off to get the LS system installed.
Nice.
Kathy
That's what I call an
McCavis.
oil change.
Yep.
Yeah. Jim Smith says hello from Michigan.
Nice.
Steve Bird asked, did you get them coil packs easier to reach?
No, not yet. I can only tackle so many things at one time.
VB Tom says, when you said more power, I thought you were installing a rocket booster.
Ah, nice.
Deborah Cornell's watching.
Nice.
Ari says, is it true that having yellow under a red hood is the secret to producing more power? Josh Nesser is watching. Hi, Josh.
It's the secret to releasing the true Tony.
Deborah Donnelly.
Oh,
hello from Washington. That's Mark's wife. Hi. Paul Kinnis says hi. And Richard Peterson and NorCal saying hi.
Nice. Thanks, everybody. That's awesome. We really appreciate everybody tuning in,
Cool,
especially live.
It's cool to hear how many people are from
all over
across
the place.
the country,
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so very cool. All right. So here's where we're at. We are not done. We started by taking out the entire grill. We just lifted it out with the radiator, the power steering cooler, everything, fans, the whole 9 yards, took it out. It's laying here on the floor. Then we took the whole, oh, this is going to be,
Probably gonna pour coolant on it.
oh, it might. Then, if I can grab it. No, not really. Never mind. The
Down
whole
there.
front assembly. With an alternator water pump. In my case, I still had an AC compressor on here. So that all came off. Then we took the front cover off. Oh no, actually we've had to pull the ATI harmonic balancer.
Yep.
Then we took the front cover off. Then we pulled the oil pump, the timing chain. We took the factory stuff off because it was single bolt, right?
Yeah.
So it's laying there. And Comp Cams is a 3-bolt, which can you zoom in on that?
Mm-hmm.
Right here. This is the 3-bolt new timing gear, timing chain.
Yep.
I just got done putting the oil pump back in. This is, I'm not going to say this was particularly hard, but you cannot be in a hurry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to really take your time. There's a lot of just steps. It's not hard, it's just there's a lot of steps. So you could easily overlook stuff. It's not uncommon to put something on, go, oh shoot, take that back off, put the other thing back on, and then reassemble.
You're just getting it out of order.
Yeah. So when you're doing jobs like this, it's real beneficial to take pictures as you go apart, so you can reference back to those pictures when you're going back together.
I've got a question for Mark from James Goldman. Mark, would you recommend a cam for a daily driven C6 LS2 Corvette, or am I better served to wait until I yank the motor out and stick it into my JK?
I'd put a cam in a heartbeat. Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely do that, especially in a Corvette.
So so let's talk about the cam that you chose for this, because
Yeah.
I think it'll serve the same answer
Sure.
that he's looking for.
Yeah, you bet. So so what we did, when Tony and I started discussing this project, he's asking for some more horsepower, and we've got a huge variety of LS camshafts. We've got stuff that fits applications from like the Corvette that James has, to late model Camaros. We have cams specific for drift applications, and then we have this series of cams that we're doing with Tony's, which is our HV series. These are designed for truck and V8 swap Jeeps and applications that are bigger vehicles, heavier, bigger tires.
Need torque.
They need torque, right? It's HV, kind of think of that as high velocity.
Yeah,
So the idea is we're trying to move.
I thought it stood for heavy vehicle.
Oh, that could be too. We'll say that too. But the idea is to maximize the port velocity in the cylinder heads, to really maximize the amount of power we can make, and then obviously we tighten up the lobe separation so it can lump and make it sound cool.
Yeah, and really that's what most of us are after is that cool sound, right?
Yeah, it's way cooler to start your vehicle up and hear it lope, and rather than just purr. So. Yep.
Steve from JK Land says that you need the cams for the 42s.
No, it worked just fine, but you always need a cam.
Yeah.
So.
And then he also asked Tony, did you pin your harmonic balancer, or is that overkill since it's not supercharged?
Yeah, exactly. For this, we didn't need to pin it. So what he's referring to is adding a keyway to the crank. Like we talked about, how it didn't have a keyway coming off. So so in this application, it's fine just to press the dampener back on. If it was a belt-driven supercharger, then absolutely I would key the dampener.
Yeah, and I'm not running the stock dampener. This is a good ATI.
Yeah.
So that makes a difference as well.
Yep.
The stock ones are known. I've got one over here. They break the web.
Yep.
So if you look at a stock one like this is really thin, and these things can tend to break off. Because the outside's heavy, so it's really easy to break those off.
Mike Stewart asked, what RPM range is the cam dialed for?
This one will be kind of, its peak power band is roughly like 2200 to 6500 RPM. Is kind of like the peak. The Valvetrain will be stable to 7,000, but there's no need to go there with this application. So we kind of spec this particular cam to work with Tony's rig. We knew he had the 4L80 in it. We knew what torque converter he had in it, and so we chose the camshaft that would fit this application. So.
And then Kyle asked, do you have any camshafts to upgrade a Willys F-head 4-cylinder?
I don't know if I have that one or not. That'd be worth a phone call to my tech shop. I don't know if I have that application.
All right, that's caught up for questions.
Okay, so this cam, earlier you and I were talking, it's not that it's got a whole lot more lift, it's the duration.
Correct.
So for you folks that are watching, if you don't know what the duration does, is it's what keeps the valve open longer. So it's going to let more fuel in, or it's going to let more exhaust out. And in this case, it's doing both.
It's doing both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we increase the duration both on the intake and the exhaust. It does have a little bit more valve lift, but that's not really what we were focusing on. It's all about that duration. The longer you can keep the valves open for, the better you're going to get air into the cylinder and get air out of the cylinder, and that's what matters, and that's what makes horsepower.
So let's talk about some of the other parts that,
Yep.
that you chose to put on right
Sure.
now, and the parts that we didn't put in.
Sure.
So
Okay. With changing the camshaft, there's a lot of different options. You know, lift and duration is very critical on other components that you do with it. Because of the size of the cam we did, we needed to change valve springs. It's very important to keep the valves opening, closing under control, right? You don't want the valve springs to get unstable. That's what you hear the term valve float. That's when oftentimes that's not enough valve spring for the camshaft you're running. So we opted to change valve springs. While doing that, we're doing steel retainers, new locks, so that'll be all fresh in the cylinder head. We're doing a one-piece chromoly push rod, so it's a thicker cylinder wall on the push rod, a little bit longer to match the camshaft. Also doing a new timing chain and gear set, and a new set of rocker arms.
So let's show them the rocker arms.
So yeah, so these are the rocker arms here that we chose to do for Tony's. These are what we call our BSR rockers. Oftentimes when you do an LS, or if you have an LS, this would be your typical rocker arm. You can see that it's just a single rocker arm, whereas now it's going to be on a shaft mount rocker arm for this application. So the benefit to this is it ties all the rocker arms together, and it allows the Valvetrain to be a lot more stable at high RPM.
Right, less deflection.
Yeah, exactly. So, so yeah, these are only, these rocker arms are only held together by a very small bolt. So there's a chance.
It is small.
Yeah. So there's a chance when you get into high RPM, that rocker arm can kind of what we call deflect, move around, and that'll change lift, that'll change duration, that can cause valve float, like we spoke about.
Yeah.
So go into a shaft mount rocker arm, that really improves stability in the Valvetrain.
Yeah, and we can show them the new springs versus the old ones.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that they're silver, they look a little beefier.
They're very similar in appearance. They're both a beehive style spring. The things that you guys may not be able to notice, the wire thickness on the new spring is a little bit larger, and the install height or the unsprung height is a little bit taller.
Kelly Sims has a question. Do you have aftermarket heads? What is the perfect scenario? Heads, cam, intake, exhaust, torque converter. How important is a high amp alternator?
Yes. So
5 questions in one.
Yeah. So yes, it's very important to match cylinder head, camshaft, and intake manifold. Anytime you can maximize those components to flow the same amount of air, you're going to make the most power or the most torque. You really want to focus it over your RPM band and your application, right? Like a common thing that people mess up on is they might buy whatever cylinder head they see in a magazine that flows the most amount of airflow because it's the newest, greatest thing, and then they put a small camshaft in. Well, the cam doesn't move enough air for the cylinder heads, then it doesn't have enough velocity, and you actually lose power. So it's very critical to match all of your components so you have a matched package. And as far as high amp alternator, I mean, yeah, I would run one, especially if you're running a bunch of accessories and whatnot.
And Anthony Paquette asked, what rocker ratio and what is the overlap and lobe center?
So these are a 1:7 ratio rocker, which is the stock ratio. You have the cam card?
Yeah.
I don't remember what we did in this. Do you want to give up your secrets?
Sure.
Okay. A lot of people don't want to share cam specs, so so
We're trying to help you sell some cams.
Okay. So this is rated at 50 thousandths. So it's 226 on the intake, 234 on the exhaust, and it's on a 112.5 lobe separation. So.
And stock was what? No lobe sep.
Lobe separation's like 116, 117, I think.
So, a little tighter.
Yeah, so a little tighter.
And that's going to give it that rumpity rump.
Yeah. So Depending on, so a lot of times you can do more duration and then a little bit wider lobe separation, and that'll still be bumpy. Or if you do a smaller duration, you can do a tighter lobe separation. It's all about valve time.
Yeah.
So that's what makes the bump.
And JK Land asked, will this change require a custom tune, or can the Holley setup adjust on the fly?
The Holley system has self-learn capability. I don't know if Tony's rigs has that turned on or not.
It is.
It is? Okay. So technically it would learn. I would still recommend having it custom tuned, and that's what Tony's going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, technically speaking, if you have a Holley setup and you have self-learn enabled, you could probably fire it up, and it'll probably stall and die a few times, but it'll eventually learn.
Yeah, they set it up, so I'm going to go to a place that they work with, and they're going to dyno tune this, and then we're going to come back and give you guys the new numbers.
Yep.
Of how much more power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Rorick and Patrick Vaughan say hi, Tony.
Hey, good to see you guys on there. Appreciate it. Okay, so we changed the timing chain because it's a 3-bolt cam,
Yep.
right? Otherwise, that one was okay. So one of the things that Mark mentioned, and I think is important to talk to everybody about, is a lot of these products they sell and what they recommend is based on how new or old your engine is. So if you picked up one with, you know, especially if the junkyard tells you it's got 60,000 miles, it probably has 80 or 90,000. And, you know, if you know your motor has more than that, then he's got a whole different set of parts that he would sell you, meaning that's where you got to pull the heads,
Yeah.
and change the lifters. Because with a motor that old, you're going to want to change the lifters, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's really the most critical part is the lifters as far as mileage and longevity on what we're doing now.
So the
Fortunately,
lifter is what runs on the cam load.
yeah. So,
Right, just
so
in case you don't
yeah. So this engine is what's called a hydraulic roller cam, and so basically there's a roller bearing on the bottom of the lifter, and that's what rides on the camshaft. And then on the top half of the lifter, there's a little hydraulic plunger, and that holds oil, and that's what actually adjusts your valve lash. So if you have a high mileage oil engine, then a lot of times you can get friction on the lifter bore, or needle bearings can wear out, whatever. And so I definitely would recommend replacing lifters. The drawback on this type of engine, to do that you have to pull the cylinder heads, which now since you have the heads off, you need to resurface them, you need new head gaskets.
Well, and if it's old, you might need a valve job.
Well,
right?
yeah,
There's a
exactly.
whole-
Yeah,
you really
yeah,
get into it.
Yeah, so there is a fair amount of work there. Fortunately, with Tony's, we knew it was relatively new. He knows the history on the engine. We know he runs good engine oil. So we figured we can use the existing lifters that are in this motor, so we didn't have to pull the heads. So.
Yeah, and I know somebody earlier asked if you guys make aftermarket heads, and you do. They're already ported and everything.
We do,
ready to
we
go.
do. So we have, you know, as I don't know if we mentioned it or not, Comp Cams and Edelbrock are the same company. Through our Edelbrock line, we have 4 or 5 different LS cylinder heads depending on airflow. We had mentioned earlier that having the correct amount of airflow to match your package and your RPM band, we have multiple different cylinder heads to choose from.
Yeah, so let me give you an example on that. So in the stock form like this is, it really works well right off of idle and smooth up through the power band. If you're rock crawling, that is what you want. If you get a super high flow head, that's great if you're drag racing, right? Like if you just go from nothing to full throttle, then you want the super high flow. If you put the super high flow on an engine that you're trying to rock crawl with, it's going to have some nasty flat spots, and it's going to be a handful, to say the least, out of the rocks.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to put some context to what Mark's saying and what you hear from a lot of people, because they always want to go big flow, big cam. Well, those things definitely have an adverse effect when you're out there trying to rock.
Yep, yep. And everything has an RPM limit, right? So if you put a cylinder head that has a ton of airflow, that's going to want to rev to 7,500 RPMs, 8,000 RPMs.
Yeah.
Well, this crank and rod is not set up for that, so it won't live there.
Right.
So.
And what I know is when you run the RPM, even if you go from 6,500 to 7,000, your valve train life is like cut in half. It really shortens it up.
Hey, I see Jordan Pellegrino.
Hey, what's going
Famous
on?
KOH racer. Get over here, Jordan. Everyone wants to say hi to Jordan.
Jordan's very familiar with ripping apart stuff and working on it.
Specifically engines. Yeah.
Nick Repenich said,
right.
can you explain why the benefits you need more power, not just for beating Doolin and Maximus off the line?
I don't know, Jordan, you want to chime in on that? Why do you need more power?
Explain the benefits.
I mean, race car is different, but it definitely helps you. I mean, in my opinion, torque is more important than horsepower for what we do. The more torque you can get, the more bottom end control you're going to have. You can load the vehicle up different. Having more torque in the rocks, that helps a lot. Horsepower is cool, and it's a fun number to talk about, but for rock crawling and Ultra 4, torque is way more important. So if you can, totally. It helps the vehicle handle a lot better in the rocks, especially if you're driving two-footed. If you drive two-footed, you're going to notice even more of an increase in performance, I would say, out of it.
Yeah, Mark and I were talking a lot about torque converters this morning at breakfast, and just how all that plays to cushion the drive line, make the power delivery smooth. You know, so you're trying to get all this stuff to work together.
And especially on the topic of converters, there's no secret recipe. You really need to build it with what you think the converter is going to be. And you might want to change the stall, raise or lower the stall once you actually drive it. Like in the race car, we've probably changed the stall 6 times.
Vehicle weight makes a difference.
Totally,
gear ratio makes a difference. Everything.
That's what I'm saying. It's like very based on your build. Like just because it works in someone else's Jeep or race car doesn't mean that you're gonna like that same converter in yours. It's definitely the motor build, the transmission, the tire size, the weight of the vehicle. All plays a role in what converter you're going to pick. So.
Yeah. And the nice thing about having a lot of horsepower and torque is you can modulate that with your right foot. If you
exactly.
don't need all of it,
you
just don't step
Use
on the
less.
gas button.
Yeah, exactly. Use less.
Yep.
Baby Tom asks, does anyone ever drop a Ford Triton V10 in a CJ YJ TJ?
Not that I've seen.
that I've seen.
That's a big motor, though.
Yeah.
It's a big motor, and Jeeps are not. I'm sure it's been done.
Yeah,
but
somebody somewhere's done it.
Yeah, someone somewhere's done it, but not that I know of.
I have seen a Viper engine
Yeah.
in a Jeep.
Yeah.
That's long. That's a really long motor, yeah.
Pat Benston says, hi Mark, see you in a couple weeks.
Hi, Pat. This is my buddy in St. George.
Nice.
Is Terremoto vinyl wrapped?
It is, yeah.
And
The original color is yellow.
And Anthony Paquette asks, are there performance kits for the LS like the older Performer or Toker series?
I don't necessarily have Performer packages like you're used to, like your conventional small block Chevy stuff. But I mean, I have Performer heads, I have Performer RPM heads, we have Victor Jr. heads, and then I have camshafts that we can match with them. So it'd be something you'd want to probably call a tech center about and talk to them and match your package up.
Bug says, you guys are making me want to spend some money. My wife's going to kill me.
It's easy to ask for forgiveness. Oh, my wife is watching.
Well, Jordan, you missed out on a lot of fun. We have gotten really dirty and.
Did you guys take it apart?
Well, he's
Oh yeah, it's already going back
He's
together.
second shift, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, new cams in, new timing sets on. We got one cylinder head one bank with springs and retainers on it. So yeah, we're on the reassembly now.
The
We
real
do
fun
new
part
springs,
was taking the oil pump off
Yeah.
because we had to drop the pan down to get the bolt out. Without dropping the bolt in the pan.
That's a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the ATI puller worked great for taking off the.
Oh yeah. Good.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's all.
I love that tool.
Yeah.
That's a lifesaver.
So we were just talking about why we changed from the stock style over, and then Mark got me a new timing gear set and chain.
Not a bad thing to replace if you're already in there.
Yeah.
You know?
So this chain's a lot nicer link for the chain itself, and then the cam sprocket itself actually has a Torrington bearing on the back, which allows it to rotate smoother and with less friction.
Yep. And then we used the good ARP bolts to hold the new sprocket on, so that's cool.
Cheap insurance.
Yeah.
Cheap insurance, they call it.
Absolutely.
And we're using the internet to check torque specs.
Yes,
on everything.
yes, we've wore out Google.
Nice.
Tom Nagley said the power of the 392 works great for a big motor. Beat Jordan on the backstretch coming back to camp at HDR.
He did.
Rick Harrington asked, how many more foot-pounds of torque do you think you'll add to the rear?
I would like to see 40 to 50 foot-pounds. Is kind of what I'm hoping to see. So if we can see 40 to 50 and somewhere in that same neighborhood for horsepower, I'd be pretty happy.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great. That's probably, you know, when I'm telling you guys about the changes we're making, the temperament of this motor, being the just GM Performance crate engine, is really what I think a lot of people would like. So by just adding this little bit extra, I think is really going to give it that kind of snap and liven it up that I think most people would get their adrenaline flowing.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it goes everywhere we want it to go. Jordan pre-ran all of KOH in this thing.
Yeah.
I was just wheeling back at Windrock and some of the other places. And that had plenty of power to get up the muddy hills and stuff. So.
Sure.
Rick Turner wants to know, can you get a remanufactured motor with your kit already in it?
Maybe from one of the
Yeah,
places
there's a
or-
number of engine companies around that that use our product. So I mean, yeah, you could probably do, like you mentioned, like a Blueprint or I mean, I don't know where you are, but I mean, you know, I'm sure there's an engine builder that could do one for you.
Rick Harrington asked, did you dyno it previously to know numbers?
We did do a base dyno. I didn't get the numbers yet. It's going to go back to the same place, so we'll be able to tell you what the difference was.
Mark Campbell says, make sure Mark does some work and not just make Tony do it all.
Oh no, no.
Mark's been working all day.
Yeah, no,
I can verify.
It's been 50-50.
All
We've
day.
been dividing and conquering.
Yep.
Yes.
It's been a good project.
Yes.
It's been fun.
Oh, Mark Lawrence asked does Jordan want to share anything about the sleeper YJ?
Oh, YJ. I'll definitely have more on that in the next couple of weeks.
It's in the process of going back together.
It's very slowly, yes. That's actually why I'm here. I heard you guys rambling over here. It's all quiet over there, so I was like, oh, I'll go see what they're up to. But came to put in a couple hours on my cage, welding that. The cage is done. I'm just in the process of welding it right now. I'll pull it out. I'll put the tub back on the frame. I'll flip the cage over, finish the welding that I can't do in the tub. Throw that back in the tub on the frame. Cut the rear frame. Weld on the new rear section. There's a whole slew. I got a whole list on my phone of things I got to do. So.
Yeah, see the engine and trans over there on the
That's the engine and trans. Yep. So yeah, all my parts are stacked carefully in the corner. I got a lot of junk and not a lot of space to work with right now. So trying to make a home for everything.
Nick Knoll asked, he said, just put a LS6 cam in my LQ4. What should I expect? Building a Tracer 3500 stall. Also debating adding a Whipple. Talk me in or out of it, guys.
Okay.
I don't know the cam difference between the two engines.
I'm not 100% on the stock cams either. You know, the one thing I will say is if you're going to put boost on it, I mean, obviously it'll work with what you're doing. There are camshafts that are spec'd for and designed for boost, so we could probably get more out of it with a different cam. But I mean, anytime you add boost to a motor, I mean, it's
bound to make more power.
It'll make more torque, that's for sure. So.
Yeah.
Anthony Paquette asked, does Edelbrock still have their crates motors?
Yeah, we have a few different options. We released some at SEMA last year, so got a few different options for them.
They'd like to see pictures, Jordan, when you get some online.
Post them up.
And Steve Bird says, so when Tony drops T-Moto into second at 70 miles per hour, is it going to pull even harder now?
I think so.
Yeah, she should have.
Cool. Can't believe more power for TERREMOTO.
Yeah, and you know what we didn't talk about was, and I'm surprised nobody said anything, the intake manifold.
Yeah.
So a while back, we changed the intake manifold. This is an Edelbrock product and fast throttle body. That is way over carbureted, right, for the rest of the engine.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I assume that's it's a 1,000 CFM throttle body. So, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily needed for this engine, but I mean, there's no issue with it. I mean, it's just a big air door at this
But
point.
even now with the cam,
It'll help.
It'll help,
Yeah,
right? Because now we're keeping everything open longer.
Yep, it'll definitely
so
help.
it's going to get some more in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I assume that was spec for the big motor.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Jordan, you have requests for a 135th JKU.
Oh my gosh.
That must be Steve Bird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably.
135th.
That's funny.
So the reason I mentioned the intake manifold is because I've gone away from the fly-by-wire. That's, to me, that's super important. Jamie's got the standard style plastic manifold, but he changed the throttle body.
Yep.
Over one of yours,
Yeah.
and made it cable.
So on Jamie's, and I think on the race car too, we have, Fast is another one of our brands, and we make a factory style replacement intake manifold. If you're used to an LS motor, normally it'd be plastic, really low, and the throttle body sits off the front. Most of the later model LS engines are what's called fly-by-wire, which is electronically controlled. We also make throttle bodies that you can convert into cable-operated throttle. And that's what's on Jamie's, and then the race cars are still cable operated.
Yeah.
Michael.
We get rid of that. There's too much delay, and then it wants a mass airflow sensor. We don't want any of that stuff.
Michael Rourke asks, what's the best motor for more torque for a 2012 JK two-door?
LS.
Yeah.
LS.
LS.
I mean, I'm a big fan of the LS. I mean, anytime you can do an aluminum block engine in these rigs, it's basically the same weight as the V6 that comes out of it. And you can make huge power with these LS engines.
Cool.
And reliable.
All right.
Yeah. Done with questions?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see, Mark. Was there anything else that we didn't talk about? Because you brought extra parts that we're not going to use, and that was based around us not pulling the heads.
Yeah.
right?
So the only thing that we're
the lifters. That's what it was.
Yeah, so the only thing I really brought that we're not going to use is the lifters, and I brought them in case we saw something that we didn't like. But so far everything looks really good, so we opted to not
the
pull
timing
heads.
chain tensioner doesn't even look like it's been worn.
No,
I mean everything looks like
this
brand
thing looks
new.
brand new.
Yeah.
We pulled the front cover off, and the oil looked spotless. Everything looked really good. Pulled the valve covers. Everything looks really, really good. So, yeah, no complaints there. I also brought, the only other thing I brought was a rocker, the trunnion kit. Oftentimes, so I kind of showed these rocker arms before. This is a stock style rocker arm, and these have just basically a non-captured needle bearing in here, and it's a common failure point for the LS engines. Yeah.
Oh.
And the way that this, you can kind of see, it's hard to see, it's kind of a D-shaped, it's not a full 360 degree bearing in there.
That's so the bolt has somewhere to sit.
Not necessarily for the bolt, it's just the way that they designed the rocker. I don't know if they did it for oil flow.
Can you show this way?
Yes, ma'am.
There we go.
So,
thanks.
Cool. So what we did with our trunnion upgrade kit is you press that whole bushing, the whole trunnion out, and we go in with a solid trunnion and a captured needle bearing.
Yeah, grab that. It's cool.
Yeah, let me do that.
He's gonna grab that.
An off-topic question.
Sure.
Does your TJ steering brace work with the XC big bore box from PSC?
Now you might be able to make it work. I absolutely recommend the steering braces. So if you can make it work, that'd be great. Okay, here he's got the.
So this is this is the trunnion upgrade, and I don't know if you can see this or not, but we'll kind of put it next to this. So you can see this is kind of just a thinner, almost like a pot metal type retainer for the trunnion. And then this is our trunnion upgrade kit. And you can see that it's a full circle, a lot beefier trunnion, and then it's a completely captured needle bearing on either side. So this is a really good upgrade anytime you get into the Valvetrain of an LS motor. I would say at minimum do a trunnion upgrade kit, and if you really want an improved part, then you go to the BSR kit, which uses the same bearing assembly that's on the trunnion kit.
Mike asked, what weight oil are you running?
Right now I'm running the 530, which I think is what we got on the table there from Torco. And you know, that's their, is it their, that's the SR5. That's the best stuff. So one of the things that everybody should know is the oil that the manufacturer's spec is really based on mileage ratings. It's not based on making your engine live. In fact, because car manufacturers want to sell more cars, they want your car to wear out, right? So you'll buy a new one. So by putting in better oil, you're going to make all the parts wear better and last longer. And literally, even the camshaft that we took out of this, it doesn't even look like it was run. I mean, everything in here just looked great. And that's a real testament to putting the right stuff in there.
Very important to have good oil.
Yeah.
And do changes regularly.
Yeah.
Yep,
So I run an oil pan that holds 3 additional quarts, so there's more oil in the system. Run an oil cooler, so that puts more. I have a remote oil filter that puts more oil. So you're just, you know, the more you can get. I mean, if you look at a big diesel engine, it's running 5 gallons, right? So the more you can put in there, just the better it's gonna all stay together. There was something else I wanted to mention that we're doing. So you're changing out the valve springs right now.
Yeah.
Oh, the tools. The tools that I use to.
Yep.
Where'd those
Yep.
go?
Let me run and get those.
Mark had these cool tools that once I pull off the gear and the cam plate, these went inside to hold the lifters up.
Yeah, so because we opted to not change the lifters, the LS engine, basically the way they work is the lifter is inside a plastic retainer cup. And so you can turn the motor or turn the camshaft by hand once you get the timing chain off, and that kind of raises the lifters up into those cups. And they kind of hold themselves in place, but just to make sure, Powerhouse Products makes these retainer bars, and they basically slide in the oil passages right next to the camshaft, and they allow it to retain the lifter, so that way if one does happen to drop out of the plastic retainer, this holds it there. So keeps us from having to surf a lifter out of the oil pan.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Mark just spun the cam,
Yep.
it pushed all the lifters up, and then we stuck those things in.
Slid these right in, and
Yep.
these are nice. These are made a lot like a push rod, where they're a one-piece chromoly. They have a round end on them, so if you do put them in and they happen to hit a lifter that's not all the way up,
It's not
they
gonna
won't
damage
mar
it.
them or
Yeah.
anything like that. So really nice. So so those were handy. And then, as Tony mentioned, we're in the process of doing the valve springs right now. I also brought with me, we make a valve spring tool. And what this does is this bolts down onto the rocker stand, and then this bolt adjusts down, and there's a plate that's, sorry, it's on the engine, and that plate pushes down on the retainers of the springs and allows us to remove the locks, and then we can disassemble it. So
Yeah, I don't know if you could show them the locks. There's a couple out
they're
there.
tiny.
So zoom in so you can see this, because
yeah.
they are tiny.
Let me do this.
It's very similar to what's on the bottom of a Fox shock.
Yeah. So here is, I stuck them to a magnet here, and I don't know if that helps you or not. So these are the locks that basically hold the retainer onto the valve.
Which
I
is the
don't know.
top of the valve spring.
Yep. So basically, you've got your valve spring, you've got your retainer, which sits on the valve spring. Obviously, your valve goes up through the center, and then these tiny little locks are what holds the valve retainer onto the valve. And there's just a little bead in here that locks into a receiver groove on the valve, and that's what keeps the valve in place.
Yeah,
So
it's not much.
it is not much.
No.
It's a little scary to think that that tiny little thing is
It's
keeping
what
it.
holds
Yeah,
everything
right.
together. Yeah.
So Mark was, after he put it all together, he'd whack it a little bit with a hammer.
Yeah, just a
dead
rubber
blow,
mallet. Yep.
to make sure that those
It
things
was
didn't
seated,
just.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure everything was seated, and
Yeah.
I'd rather it pop off now and we chase the lock around than it
Yeah.
ruin the motors. Yeah.
So we did also, Mark ran the injectors. We took them out.
Yep.
He ran them over to Hawaii. They cleaned them, made sure they're all operating properly. So we're going to put those back in.
Yeah, we're gonna go in. We'll do new spark plugs when we go in.
Yeah.
So she'll be fresh and ready to make some horsepower.
Yeah, that's going to be great.
Yep.
So,
So
any more questions over there?
No, Tyler says, hi, Jennings Page. Hi, Tyler.
Even Tyler's watching. Nice. So, let's see. Next steps.
Yeah, what's the next step?
yeah.
We're going to put the front cover back on.
Yep.
Then we'll put the damper back on.
Yep.
And then we could put all the accessories.
Yep. Put the
Back
front of the
on.
motor back together. We got a whole bunch of valve springs still to replace. We'll do the new chromoly push rods, the rocker arms. We'll check and verify that our push rod lengths are correct.
Oh yeah, I should mention, I'm working on the front, you're working on the valve.
Yeah, we're kind of doing
Yeah,
two things
we're-
at once
yeah,
here to
divide and conquer, yeah.
try and get it done in a reasonable time
Yeah.
frame.
One of the things that I did ask Mark was, hey, for the average guy in his garage, how long is this going to take? And I think we both agree, a solid weekend.
Yeah, I would say a solid weekend, and we've kind of purposely done this job to simulate like a guy in his garage.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, the Jeep's on a lift, but if you look at it, it's basically on the ground. Just assume it's on jack stands.
Yeah.
We haven't raised the lift once. So, you know, the average guy can do this in his garage, really. It makes a mess. We've got oil and coolant and power steering fluid and kitty litter all
Have
over
kitty
the floor.
litter ready.
Yeah.
So definitely have shop rags and kitty litter ready. But I mean, it's something that, you know, if you've got mechanical ability, you know, you could do it in a solid weekend.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's just
I
steps.
mean, realistic, we've been working on it for what, maybe 6 hours-ish?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
So,
Not bad.
yeah, not bad.
Any
we
guesses on horsepower numbers?
Like I mentioned earlier, we're hoping to, you know, if we can gain 40 to 50 rear wheel, I'd be pretty darn happy.
And Tom Nagley asks, do you have the original cam pulled out already to show the difference between what is coming out versus what is going in?
We have the old cam. Unfortunately, the new cam is in the engine,
Already.
so we can't really do a side-by-side.
They look very similar.
do.
Even Mark and I were looking at, you can see the lobes are a little wider,
Yeah.
you know, for that duration.
Yeah.
But to, you know, certainly to show you guys on camera, it would just look like a shiny part.
Yeah. Keep in mind, we're talking thousandths of an inch, you know,
Yeah.
that difference is, and it's dramatic for horsepower, but it's looking at it with the naked eye, it's hard to
Not
tell.
much,
Yeah.
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 So,
Okay, we're all caught up.
nice. Okay. So, show them the little air thing you're using to keep the valves in.
Oh yeah. So this is
Can you
another.
zoom in on this?
I
Yep.
can unthread it. I don't have it hooked up, so.
So this is something that he puts in the spark plug hole.
Yeah, so this is just a regulator. Like a lot of people, if you do any painting or anything, you would use a regulator to control your air pressure. And then this hose, again, is another Powerhouse product. So this is set up with a couple different thread pitches on it. And you thread it into the spark plug hole, and then you put air on it, and that puts air into the cylinders. And what that does is that holds the valve closed, so when we do take the valve spring off, we don't have to worry about the valve dropping in the cylinder. Yep, yep.
That's smart.
Pretty
So,
clever,
yeah,
huh?
that's cool.
so
Now you can hear air passing by the ring since the motor's cold.
Yeah, you'll hear air passing by the rings, or a lot of times if the retainer and the locks are really stuck on,
Yeah.
it'll actually start to open the valve, and you'll hear like a rushing air. So like sometimes you'll hear it go out the intake,
Yeah.
or you'll hear it go out the exhaust pipe. So sometimes you can just smack it with a rubber mallet, and that releases
Gets
the
it to
lock.
settle.
Yeah. But it's a good tool. It's a good trick. You know, it makes it easier to do valve springs on the engine rather than having to pull the heads and do it on the bench. So.
Tom says that's genius. Nick Repinich asks, how will this affect heating and wear?
So remember, this radiator and cooling system I've got was built for 650 horsepower. So we're still going to be in the 500 range
Yeah.
by the time we're done. So this will be more than ample, still able to cool everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, most of the time, if you do just a camshaft, if you have a good cooling system, obviously that's critical. If you have a good cooling system, just a camshaft change probably won't affect heat very much at all. It's when your cooling system's at the limit already, that's when it's going to make it obvious that there's an issue. So.
Darren Rainey, if you didn't change the push rods, is there a special break-in?
Not necessarily. The nice thing about roller cams is you don't really have a break-in period like a traditional flat tappet would. If you didn't change the push rods, really the only thing you'd want to do is make sure that the ends of them are good, there's no marring, they don't look excessively worn. The drawback is I don't think the stock push rods would be long enough, so you probably have to change them anyway.
and
So.
they're not that expensive, right?
No, in the grand scheme of things, I think the push rods are probably the cheapest thing that's
In here.
on there. Yeah, you know. So
Last time I bought them, they were like $15 a piece or something. It's not much.
yeah, not much. I think like these we did our Magnum push rods, which are the one-piece chromoly, and I want to think they're 160, 180 bucks for the set.
Yeah.
So they're not horrible.
And cams typically what, $400?
Camshafts are anywhere from 460 to 499, somewhere in that range. So.
And then this rocker set.
Rocker set. I'm going off the top of my head here, so sorry if I'm off a little bit. But yeah, right. Mark said it's going to be this much.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're going to be probably around between $600 and $700 probably for the rocker set. So.
Okay. Or the trunnions are what?
Trunnions are 200-ish, so significantly less. The drawback, it's one of those things. If you're doing the work yourself, the trunnion kit's not a bad option. If you're paying somebody shop labor to do the trunnion upgrade for you,
You could also afford the other setup.
you could go to the BSRs. You're not paying labor, and it's assembled, and it's a better product. So, so that's kind of something to think about.
Because the trunnion kit takes time. You have
Does.
to disassemble
Does,
and then
yeah.
reassemble each
Yeah.
one.
We sell the trunnion kit that comes with a really nice tool that simplifies it. It's all packaged up here, but we have a nice tool that it basically it has a cup on the bottom that you set the rocker into, and then if you have a press, you can then press the trunnion out the bottom. So it does simplify it quite a bit, but I mean, still expect it to take a couple hours. So, and if you're paying a shop rate, that's
at $185 an hour.
who knows?
you can
Yeah.
afford.
Now just go to the BSRs and save yourself some labor.
And you got a nice
Yeah.
rocker.
Bug says, can't wait to see it run. When will it fire?
I am also, while it's apart, I'm going to change my power steering pump. I was just going to go over some other stuff while I have it apart.
Yeah.
So, because this is probably the last opportunity I'll have before we do our real hammers experience.
And Kathy McCavis asked if you could talk about the headers.
Sure. Okay, so on a vehicle like this that's four-wheel drive, that we try and have it sit very low, means that all of the control arms, that upper control arm comes up and the drive shaft comes up, right where the exhaust would normally go. So the headers are reversed, so they come up instead of down, and then we turn them and merge them later on down here. It's a very easy way to do it. Some guys, if you run the standard style manifold, what they'll do is they'll come up over the top and then merge them on this side. Super common in 04.
Yeah.
But that puts a lot of heat right next to a plastic
My
manifold.
biggest peeve.
Like,
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. This is a great way to do it. You can see I've got louvers right above and I don't run inner fender wells, so there is air pouring through here. Plus I've got the scoop, so whatever air isn't taken into the air cleaner is flushed down. Really, it's turned out to be a great setup for, heck, we've had it for over 10 years now, so yeah, it really works good.
George Kane asked, when you put the new cam, will you need to dyno tune the engine computer?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, we will. Certainly, if you want to get the most performance out of it. Now, if you're not familiar with Holley or any of the aftermarket ECUs, they have a little questionnaire that you can go through and tell your cam specs and, you know, cubic inches and blah. It'll get you pretty close,
Yeah.
and then it'll
Yeah.
self-tune, you know.
Yeah.
But if you really want to, you know, right out of the box, get more performance, then you just go to a dyno shop and.
Yeah, a lot of times it'll depend on what size cam you have. Like if you look at like one of our catalogs, you can actually look, and we have some listings that are some computer controlled, compatible cams, and we'll have little notes in it that says no tuning required. And so a lot of times those are cams you can just plug in, and basically what we're assuming is going to happen is the computer's going to learn and it's going to adjust to it. Now, like I said, those are going to be smaller cams, so you won't get huge horsepower gains like we're going to get here, but there are those options. You know, and a lot of computers like the Holly, or like we have through Edelbrock, we have our ProFlow system, and that's a neat setup. It's got a, like you said, it's got a little handheld. You can do it through your phone, through an app on your phone, and yeah, it asks you how aggressive your camshaft is, what cubic inches the engine are, you know, a series of questions, and you hit Start Wizard, and then it kind of does a base map for you, and it learns itself.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what computer system you're
So, you
running.
know, and that's not going to be like I was talking about before, where you're like super smooth off idle and stuff. It'll run. You know, you're just not going to have everything optimized.
Yeah.
So.
It's best to have it tuned. Even if it's a self-learned setup, it's best to take it somewhere, get it on a dyno, have somebody hook a wideband up to it, and even if you're not dynoing it for max power, just drive it, let it go through the gears, accelerate, decel, and just make sure fuel mixtures and everything are good.
Yeah. Yeah, and remember, I'm not letting the ECU control the transmission. I only use it for the engine. So that's a big difference. A lot of people still have a transmission that is computer controlled. So your dyno tune guy would be adjusting that as well. So, oh, that's the GoPro.
Oh.
Let's see, there was something else I was going to mention.
Tom wants to know if you'll go live when you are ready to fire it back up so they can all hear it.
Sure. Yeah, we could do that.
Chris Moore said, Tony, I need the best trail dog discount.
Nice.
Don't we have a good Labor Day sale going on? The website?
Yeah, I don't know if it's done or still going or what, but yeah.
Nick Repanich, what if you want even more horsepower?
Then we gotta, you know, you're talking about bigger cubic inch, more compression, right? Better heads. Like these are just standard LS3 heads.
Yeah. I mean,
Or
we
everything.
could technically, I mean, we could make more power with this engine configuration. It's just other things we got to look at, like torque converter, what RPM band that it's going to operate in. So I mean, we can make more power with this LS3. It's just not right for this application. But I mean, yeah, you can always make more power. I mean, it's just, you know, like you said, more cubic inches, better cylinder heads.
We got that
bigger
engine sitting
cam.
right there. you
Yeah,
know, so-
exactly.
which is loaded with your parts.
Yep. Or like somebody else mentioned, add boost.
Yeah.
You know, that's always an option
Yeah,
too.
I'm
I know you're not a boost guy.
Yeah, I'm a normal,
I get it.
natural aspiration,
Yeah.
you know, type person. But
Rick
only
Harrington.
because it matches the horsepower and the torque are usually very close. Like, you know, you can have 630 horsepower and like 595 foot-pounds of torque. So you keep, and that just makes it more electric, you know, going
Yeah.
through the power band. So.
Rick wants to know, Tony, if you've missed having the bigger engine with the 650 plus horsepower.
Yeah, the bigger engines are also a little more finicky, right? They can be temperamental. Like you get, it's just like a thoroughbred racehorse, right? The thing's like all twitchy and wants to go, you know, versus a regular horse. It's like happy to just be out riding, you know. So maybe that's the best way to put it.
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
but you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
right?
I'm trying to think what my 3.8 liter is. That a mule?
So yeah, there are definitely times when, and I'll tell you when it is, because Mark and I were talking about this earlier too. Like when you first go through the first few gears on this engine, it feels fine. You know, you don't go like, oh, you know, this has no power. It's once you get into third and fourth, with my big engine, when you lay into it, it would just sink you back in the seat. And there would be times in my mind where I would go like 1,000, 2 1,000, 3. Like if you held that pedal to the floor for more than 3 1,000, you're going well over 100. and you better know what's ahead of you, or you're going to hit it hard.
You're covering a lot of dirt.
A lot of
fast
dirt.
At that point.
Yeah. So, yeah. And like Steve Bird said, this thing, the way it's set up, even as is, you can be going 70 on the freeway and just drop into second gear and hammer it. So, it just shows you the range of speed you've got. It's a lot. So.
Mark, do you want to do our trivia question?
Oh yeah, we do.
Oh, is it?
There's the gift
that
card.
time? Sure.
So
Putting all the pressure on Mark.
This is for
Okay.
a $250
Yep.
$250.
gift card
Man.
for K&N.
So what's the
No,
parameters?
no Googling.
No Googling.
You just have to know or guess.
Yes.
And the first one to answer correctly wins the gift card.
Okay. So we'll do. This should be easy. Hopefully it's easy. So since Edelbrock is the parent company, let's do an Edelbrock question, and let's say, what is the original originator of Edelbrock? And you can't say Mr. Edelbrock. That's not it.
Oh,
What's
we
the
need his
first name
Okay.
of Mr. Edelbrock? How about that?
All right.
Original founder
So
of
the
Edelbrock.
first one that comes up with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, Edelbrock is celebrating their 85th year,
85th, yeah,
which is
yeah.
pretty darn impressive. And for a lot of you that follow me, in just the last 3 or 4 weeks, I was at Edelbrock
Yeah,
getting
yeah,
the big tour, and it was very impressive to see. Just like us, all those American-made
Well,
products.
I was just
man.
going to go there
I
too.
love
I mean,
that.
that's one of the things I love working with GenRight and Tony is it's American-made company, American products, and that's the same with us. We were Edelbrock was founded in Torrance, California. Comp Cams was founded in Memphis, Tennessee. We have manufacturing facilities in North Carolina and Michigan, still here in Southern California, Memphis, Olive Branch, Mississippi, Ashland, Mississippi. So everything is U.S. made. You hear a lot of misconceptions online that everything's from overseas. It's not the case. It's
Right.
U.S. made, and we're proud of that.
And Mark's a Jeep guy, so that's
I'm a Jeep guy.
that's one of the things that I enjoy working
Yep,
with you.
yep. I've got a JK. My wife, who's watching, she's got a JL. So yes, we are Jeep people.
Okay, Mark, is the answer Jim?
Nope,
Is it Tim?
nope.
Is it Vic Sr.?
Ooh, there you go.
Anthony
Vic.
Paquette got it first on
Nice.
YouTube.
Yeah,
Good job,
there
Anthony.
you go. Yeah.
So we just need your
No, I know
PM
who
or
he
something?
is.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll email him the info.
Cool. Good job.
Cool.
Rick Turner asked, what vehicle, what engine, and what all does Mark run in his engine?
Mine's stock, man. I've got a 2009 JK, and it's still running the 3.8 liter. So I live up in Washington. It's just kind of a Northwest Trails rig. No horsepower, just
the
gets it
trails
done.
are narrow, right?
Yeah, a little bit
Like-
narrower.
Yeah.
We spend most of our time just driving through trees than anything else. So it's just a 3.8 liter, 538 gears, 37s, 2-door.
But we were at lunch just talking about how he drove his wife's and turned off all the traction
I
control.
did, man. So I drove my wife's JL to Easter Jeep Safari because we had a booth, and once I unloaded the display, I had to go exploring, and man, that wheelbase is nice. It was.
Yeah, that engine and 8-speed tranny, that's
Yeah,
a nice, especially if you manually shift it.
Yeah. Once you turn the traction control off, and that thing, it surprised me how well it did.
Yeah.
So
Mark also helps out with a couple of Ultra 4 teams. So he's constantly helping the drivers with engine upgrades.
Yeah.
And we were talking about some of the cams that you put in some of the other drivers' cars and
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah, I enjoy the off-road community just for one. So I like to go to a lot of the King of the Hammers races. I'll go to any of the Ultra 4 races that are Montana, the one they held at Area BFE a couple years ago.
Certainly KOH.
Yeah, KOH. So I definitely enjoy being in the off-road world. So, yep, absolutely.
Jeremy Dupper says hi, and he says, Mark helped me choose my comp cam in my 6.0 LS with other comp parts. Great guy to talk to.
There you
Yeah,
go.
good deal. Thanks, Jeremy.
Jim Snyder was close second on the answer of Vic, but Anthony came in a split second before.
Oh.
So
Nice.
a lot of people got that one.
Yeah,
So
good.
good job, guys.
Good job.
All right. Well, unless you have any last-second questions, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for watching. Our next couple events are Trail Hero and then our turkey run out at the Hammers. So they're on our website.
We're gonna do. You want to talk about the YouTube video that we're kind of shooting there?
Sure.
So that's one thing we're also doing, guys. If you're interested in the process of how we've been doing this, we've been filming the whole thing.
Yeah.
And Tony's going to put that on YouTube, so you can kind of see. We'll have close-ups of kind of what we're doing with changing the valve springs. I think Jamie's putting together a time lapse, so you can really see a little bit more in depth on what we're doing.
Yeah. So there you go. So check out our YouTube channel coming up. If you have your notifications turned on, when we post that video, you'll see that we posted something new. So, all right. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good one. Till next Wednesday.